Hi, it's Rachel with Stirring the Deep. In Psalm 94, verses 12 and 13, it says, "Blessed is the man whom you instruct, O Lord, and teach out of your law, that you may give him rest from the days of adversity until the pit is dug for the wicked." And in verse 23, it says, "He has brought on them their own iniquity, and shall cut them off in their own wickedness." These verses, all that we have been learning and going through, what God teaches you, and when you really start into a deep communion with Him, His law is love. The commandments are love God and love others. And how often we have heard this, yet so many of us have had hardness toward love. And because when we have desired love, we have received pain and suffering. And so our love and our concepts of love have been defiled. Yet love in its purest form is power. It is the power of God. And this time that we're moving into, it's all about love. So if you think it's about anything other than that, when it comes to Christ's return, then you've yet to see Him face to face within your spirit. We haven't seen Him fully, because when we are fully as Him, we'll see Him as He is. We can only fully see Him when we are like Him, because that gives us the ability in our perception as to see Him. Those who are taught by God, that's what you learn, is that every instruction of God comes down to love. Now, initially in seeking and learning, you may not understand that, but this is the point that God brings you to, because love includes every characteristic of God. And this is the thing, is it's so critical and interesting about these verses, that it says that you may give him rest from the days of adversity until the pit is dug for the wicked. That's talking about the end time. And we are going to have rest. Those who are taught by God the law of love, where others are going to have unrest. Because what rules when truth and love come is love. And so if you're working willingly counter to the things of love, so there's intentionally trying to harm someone, taking personal vengeance, holding on to bitterness, holding on to grudges, all of these different types of things, then you are creating your own destruction. You are growing up to be a tear, that you will be cut off in your own wickedness. Your own wickedness will turn upon you. So those things that you're holding on to that are counter to love, the lust of the eyes, the lust of life, the pride of life, all these things are contrary to love. And I'm hesitating because I'm going to dive into this in just a minute, okay? A recap of over these months I've been talking about love, and I want to kind of go back into a recap of all those things, because this is our new garments. This is how you put on the new garments. So I talked in my previous video about how everybody is going to be awakened. Okay, that's the resurrection of the just and the unjust. Now, some to everlasting life and some to shame. Now, why shame? You feel shame when you see your filthy garments and there is nothing underneath. So you're naked. And that's what Jesus says in Revelation 3 when he's talking to one of the churches. He says, Because you say, I am rich and have become wealthy and have need of nothing, and do not know that you are wretched, miserable, poor, blind, and naked. The nakedness is you don't have the righteousness, the pure white garments. And what those garments are, it's your reality. Your garments is your reality. And when you are sowing to the flesh, that's what you're reaping. And so your world, your garments, your life reflects of the flesh. When you're sowing of the spirit, your world, your reality, what you experience reflects righteousness. It reflects love. So we all come out of the grave, and we've all been, but some of us, when that dirt, when we're wiped off, it's also like coming out of the womb. When the blood, when the residue of the womb is removed, what will you see? Will you see that spirit that is beautiful, that's of the purest of love, that you have been waiting to come forth? Or will you just see filth because you have trusted in your own righteousness, you have trusted in your own ways, you have thought that you were a good person, you have thought whatever it is that you trusted in, other than the love of God being formed in you by his hand, by his will, by his wisdom, not the wisdom of the world. If that's all that you had, you're just going to see filth. And that's going to be that shame that you feel. You're going to see, your eyes are going to be open. He comes to open the eyes of the blind. And that's what you will see. So this is why those who have been taught by God, I talked about how when you walk in God's wisdom in your life, it creates smooth paths, it creates peace, it creates rest. So as you walk more and more in the truth, because that spirit is coming alive in you, that union of you and Christ, that beautiful new creation that is like the most beautiful part of you, is that comes forth, that is what you're going to experience. That is going to be your reality. And that spirit creates peace. Remember, the peacemakers are called sons of God. When that comes forth, you are a son of God. Peace is what you create. Rest is what you create. Love is what you create. And love is so central to that. Because that is now to put on those garments. To have the righteousness is acting in love. Perfect love. To put on the garments, what you're going to find is that they come from operating and being moved and operating in the flow of love. It is a beautiful, beautiful reality. So we talked about this transformation that we go through. Our bodies transform. And it talks about, let me see if I can find, it's in let me read that for you. It's in Philippians 3:21. Philippians 3:21. Who will transform, this is the Lord Jesus Christ, because he's in us, uniting to our soul. Who will transform our lowly body that it may be conformed to his glorious body, according to the working by which he is able even to subdue all things to himself. And that is good news, because when you come out of the grave, the filth that you feel is that residue of the habitual actions that's of the flesh. But right now, what is happening is that new turban is coming upon your head, as it talks about in Zechariah 3, that's a radical transformation of your mind, because that's where it all starts. The new turban's wrapped around is the new thoughts. And there are some and it all has to do with love. It is amazing how everything in my life God is teaching me about his love. And it is so beautiful. And it is just such a strong desire to be in that fully. But this is what he will do. He transforms us, because we cannot do that ourselves. So as we come and are transformed. So it's that beautiful new creation that you see growing within you, coming forth, pushing out, manifesting into your reality. That it's like you're seeing that the bride and the groom have become one flesh. And then that is made apparent to all. Where those that have not been united, that also will be apparent. But one thing, I don't know what that will look like, how that will occur, what it will entail. Because one thing I'm learning is that during this time that we're in, when I really know it and understand it is when I go through it. Before, I can talk about it and articulate it in these words and these pictures, but those create these pictures for us in our mind. But that's not the reality. So you can't hold on too tightly to those. You always have to go and just embrace the spirit behind the words. Because how this manifests, none of us really knows until it happens. But one thing that God desires, that He's been teaching that's above all, is love. And so when you're wearing the white garments, when you're clothed with those new garments of His Spirit, one thing that you will be reflecting and that you will start to see is love of the purest, most beautiful kind. And that is what other people will start to feel from you too. Because that's the spirit that's in you, is of love. So when people are talking about this end that is coming, the end of one age, the end of death, and the beginning of life, it's a beautiful thing that's happening. It's an amazing thing that's happening. And yes, it's the darkness of it is that so many people are in the dark and they don't see. Okay? And they will see. And that will be a eye-opening experience, literally. But the end is love. That's where all of this is moving to. So when you know that end, it's a glorious thing when Christ returns, because that's what He's doing. His reign is a reign of righteousness, which is loving perfectly. In my next video, I'll dive into a little bit about what love is and what it entails. Till next time, keep stirring the deep. It's the one thing that changes everything else.